In today's episode, Russia is not committing genocide in Ukraine. Kremlin propagandists make the most of the UN Commission's conclusion. Personnel rotations in the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Oleksiy Reznikov was fired because the war in Ukraine has dragged on. Ukrainian soldiers are widely infected with HIV because they are offered free testing. Our analytical team at Detector Media is on constant watch, tracking the spread of the boldest fakes from Kremlin propaganda. I'm Vadym Miskyi, and for the next 10 minutes I'll guide you through the key facts. Let's get started. Russia is not committing genocide in Ukraine. This was supposedly the conclusion of the UN International Commission of Inquiry, of course according to Kremlin propagandists.
Let me say that we are perfectly aware of the concerns and allegations concerning that crime. We are therefore investigating this step by step. As of now, we do not have sufficient available evidence to meet the legal qualifications in the Genocide Convention. You will recall that it is a matter of intent, and it's also of the perpetrators, and there must also be a necessity to destroy a certain group. And such destruction must be physical or biological according to the convention. Now, these are strict conditions, and this is confirmed by case law. This said, we will of course continue our investigations. As mentioned previously, we have noted, for instance, that there have been certain statements in Russian media which could perhaps be relevant to the issue of incitement to genocide. This is one line we are following, and we will look at this. But so far there are no conclusions. We will just say that we are continuing our investigations, and there may also be other issues that we will pursue. But let me say, this issue should not be considered in isolation from our other findings. As you will know, we have found a large number of war crimes. That's a serious crime. We have found that, at least with respect to two topics, namely torture and attacks in connection with the waves against Ukraine since October 2022.
Here is what the former president of the Russian Federation and deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council Medvedev wrote on this matter on his Telegram channel. Quote, "If the members of this commission really want to find genocide and war crimes in Ukraine, they should stop acting like blind moles and, having properly wiped their eyes, just look in the right direction, in the direction of the criminal Kiev regime." I would like to remind you what genocide is. The UN Convention defines this concept as any action committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial or religious group. And here is the testimony of a terrorist from the Wagner PMC.
И я правильно понимаю, что приказ был на зачистку именно потому, что жители этого населенного пункта являлись украинцами?
Да.
То есть вопрос был не в том, что они там военные, или они оттуда там укрываются военные, или они стреляют. Просто приказ зачистить, потому что там живут украинцы.
Кто есть, на твоем пути, как говорится, тех убирать, все.
The Ukrainian ombudsman responded to the statement of the UN International Commission on the lack of evidence of genocide. He stated that Russia's war crimes against our people should be considered the deliberate destruction of Ukrainians as a nation.
Напевно, ми вкотре бачимо з одного боку, що Російська Федерація продовжує не просто вбивати цивільне населення, а вчиняє воєнний злочин, який повинен бути визнаний як геноцид української нації. Саме геноцид. На жаль, Організація Об'єднаних Націй, яка фактично і відповідає не тільки за збір доказів, а за юридичне визнання, за політичні заяви, за якісь конкретні дії по відношенню до країни, яка вчиняє подібні злочини, до Російської Федерації, на жаль, не робить нічого.
At the same time, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Oleksiy Reznikov, noted that Russia's armed aggression is becoming synonymous with torture and other inhumane cruelty. I quote, "The volume of credible allegations of torture and other inhumane acts that are being perpetrated against civilians and prisoners of war by Russian authorities appears to be unabating." I should add that according to the UN, the Russian army has killed at least 9,500 civilians in Ukraine, including 545 children. Almost 17,000 people have been injured. The true numbers of victims of Russian aggression may be much higher than the official figures, the UN believes. Oleksiy Reznikov was dismissed from the post of defense minister because the war in Ukraine has dragged on. This manipulative message was spread by Kremlin propagandists, citing an article in the New York Times. Stop Fake fact-checkers analyzed the article. The conclusion is that the New York Times did not indicate this reason as a key reason for Reznikov's dismissal. To quote the article, the fate of the defense minister Oleksiy Reznikov had been the subject of increasing speculations in Ukraine as financial improprieties in the ministry came to light and the government started several investigations into official corruption. The authors also add that due to the war dragging on, there is a need for new leadership that can solve the accumulating problems. And here are the arguments of the Ukrainian president regarding the new minister.
Представив сьогодні офіційно нового міністра оборони України Рустема Умєрова. Сильна людина, системна, добре знає сферу оборони. Від перших днів повномасштабної війни задійний в переговорах щодо озброї для України. Дуже чутливі переговори, результативні. Займається перемовинами і щодо звільнення наших людей з російського полону. В цьому у Рустема теж є важливі для України результати. Він може перезавантажити роботу Міністерства оборони, саме це зараз потрібно.
Я вдячний президенту України за таку надану довіру. Україна поверне своє і цього разу кожен метр та кожен сантиметр нашої землі знову буде під українським прапором.
The American leader did not comment on personnel rotations in the Ukrainian defense ministry.
Pardon me?
But they heard that Zelensky has released his defense ministry.
Yes. Not probably.
Changing top officials is a standard practice in democratic countries, unlike in Russia, where Shoigu and Gerasimov remain in the office after the complete failure of the so-called special military operation due to corruption and inept leadership. Fortunately for Ukraine, let them stay in office. They'll just end up moving to The Hague after that. Kremlin propagandists systematically exploit the topic of socially vulnerable groups. This time they have targeted HIV-positive people. Here's another fake. Ukrainian military personnel are supposedly widely infected with HIV because they are offered free testing. The logic is excellent. The Russian press have also traditionally linked the United States and biolaboratories to the problems of HIV-infected people.
Не так давно Вашингтон признал наличие на Украине своих биолабораторий. Со слов координатора Совета национальной безопасности США Джона Кирби, на предприятиях велись, цитата, «некоторые исследования в сфере предотвращения пандемии». Но есть еще одно заявление, сделанное замминистра обороны США, которое наводит на еще более тревожные мысли. Когда Уотсон перешел от обобщенных страшилок к более конкретным, он как бы вскользь коснулся намерений ведомства, цитирую, «модифицировать иммунную систему военнослужащих для защиты от максимально широкого спектра вирусов и токсинов». На этот момент следует обратить особо пристальное внимание. Хочу напомнить, что современная медицина и фармакология до сих пор не может справиться с вирусом иммунодефицита человека, СПИД, на борьбу с которым тратятся миллиарды долларов и работают тысячи специалистов. Куда заведут эксперименты американских военных биологов, даже страшно представить.
Vox Check fact-checkers explain that HIV testing in Ukraine is free of charge. All Ukrainians have the right to take advantage of this opportunity. The topic of US biolabs, meanwhile, is beyond the realm of common sense.
The Russian accusations are absurd, they're laughable, and, you know, in the words of my Irish Catholic grandfather, a bunch of malarkey. There's nothing to it. It's classic Russian propaganda, and I wouldn't, if I were you, I wouldn't give it a drop of ink worth paying attention to.
Yeah, but can you explain to us has there been any relationship between the?
We are not developing biological or chemical weapons inside Ukraine. It's not happening. Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Is there any concern that Russia is actually doing this because they're planning some sort of a chem-biological attack?
I mean, again, not being perfectly inside the minds of the Russians, we have seen one of their playbooks is to accuse the other that which you are doing or which you plan to do, and to create a narrative that of victimhood and blaming somebody else for something that you're in fact going to do. I have no evidence of that. I'm not suggesting that that's in the offing right now. I have no intelligence indicators that that type of weaponry is in Ukraine and being planned to be used. So I want to be clear. But it is of a piece of the Russian playbook to blame others for that which you are about to do or you're considering doing. They've done that plenty of times before.
On the other hand, captured mercenaries of the Wagner PMC terrorist group who are HIV positive say that the Russian leadership promised them antiretroviral therapy when recruiting them for the war. They had no access to it in prison. This was reported by the New York Times. The publication, citing Ukrainian intelligence data, adds that about 20% of Russian mercenaries recruited from the colonies have HIV. Once again, we encounter the very propaganda trope that the West is growing tired of Ukraine. This time, Russian media used the German Chancellor's speech to promote this narrative. Reportedly, Olaf Scholz intimidated the German government with Russia and ordered them to turn out their pockets.
Sie kündigen den gerade auf. Und Sie werden dem Ernst der Lage, der mit der Zeitenwende, die der russische Angriffskrieg auf die Ukraine darstellt, überhaupt nicht gerecht mit Ihrer nur rhetorisch gemeinten Rede. Das ist schlecht, weil die Aufgabe, auf die Zeitenwende zu reagieren, die der russische Angriffskrieg darstellt und die Bedrohung, die er für die Sicherheitsarchitektur in Europa darstellt, uns ja nicht nur in dieser, sondern viele, viele Legislaturperioden beschäftigen wird. Und ja, wir geben jetzt die 100 Milliarden aus, damit die Bundeswehr ab dem nächsten Jahr 2% NATO-Quote an Finanzmitteln zur Verfügung hat. Und ja, schon jetzt, schon heute ist klar, dass allerspätestens ab 2028 wir zusätzliche 25, vielleicht auch fast 30 Milliarden Euro für die Bundeswehr aus dem Bundeshaushalt direkt finanzieren müssen. Und deshalb ist der Ernst der Lage nicht Rhetorik und Popanze, sondern
After distorting the content of the Chancellor's speech, propagandists focused on his appearance. Scholz published his first photo after an injury sustained during exercise. He added, "I look forward to the memes. Thank you for the good wishes. It looked worse than it really is." And here is what the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Zakharova wrote on her Telegram channel. I quote, "To be honest, I thought this was a meme, and looks worse than it really is, sounds presumptuous. In fact, this is a great example of another cringe from European liberal elites, which shows how out of touch they are with reality." Maria Zakharova once again demonstrated the highest level of professionalism of Russian diplomacy. Stay with us to never fall victim to Kremlin propaganda. Ukraine will win. We thank our Western partners. Have a good day.